What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Game Dev Unchained, the #1 game development podcast about game development and the lifestyle thereof. I'm your host, Brandon Pham, and with me, a returning guest, Damien Evans. How you doing, Damien?
I'm doing good. How you doing, Brandon?
All right, for a little background, this is your second time because the first time I messed up, but always a pleasure to kind of talk to you. If you don't mind, this is the part where our guests introduce themselves to the listeners out there, which is you. A little bit about yourself, where you are, where you've been, where you're heading.
Yeah, so I'm Damien. Actually, this is my third time back because remember the very first time was when Larry was still doing this too, and so
super early.
I was talking to you too about that. I'm currently a senior environment artist / was the outsource manager as well at Cold Iron. I've been there since November. And previously I was at Sony / Naughty Dog, and I was there for about 7.5 years or so until I was ungloriously hit with the hatchet of layoffs back in November. And I fortunately was able to get the current job that I have at Cold Iron shortly thereafter, because we were pretty much, a lot of us, aware or feeling the pinch of what we're doing or what the lack thereof we're not doing was unsustainable. And I highly, highly, highly praise Sony and Naughty Dog for sticking it out and doing everything that they could to try to keep people for as long as they did, because there was a large layoff for us in November. And I remember thinking back to that July before, going, this doesn't make sense with what's going on. And we lasted from July until November with trying to do what we could for work. Everybody was trying to scramble and say, okay, well, we could do this, or we could do that. Let's put them here. Let's put them there. And I'm thankful that they were even able to do that, because from a business standpoint, it didn't make sense to keep everybody like they did for as long as they did. But I think that it was a situation where it was the beginning of all of this real bloodbath of stuff that was going on. We had already been obviously in it for about 8 months or so before that. And it was just this kind of slow burn. And then right around before the first or the end of the year is when we all thought it was going to, be the end of it all. And if everybody makes it till December, January, February, it was probably pretty good.
Yeah.
And then it's just kept going and going and going. And it's just one of those things where I started interviewing because, like I said, I'm like, you know what? I need to figure out something because this doesn't seem sustainable. And that's whenever it was like all the work just started going away for everybody.
Yeah.
Projects were being canceled. There was just not enough funding, for whatever reasons, looking back and still to this day as to why, everybody has their speculations and their reasons, and this is why, and then this is why. And then there's the conspiracy, theories about, what's been going on with our industry and this and that. So, unfortunately, I was hit with that with a bunch of my other coworkers and friends. And as we were talking about before, it just continues to have been getting worse after the first of the year. And like I said, we all thought that if people made it till, at least February, even March, that things would be good. And here we are in May. And as we all woke up to this morning, 3 or 4 studios, Arcane being one of them, and having, some friends there, completely shutting their doors. So it just seems par for the course these days. It's just like I was talking about before. It's almost no longer a, oh my God, did you hear? It's a, oh, again? oh, another, and it's just leading to um, lack of jobs in companies, unfortunately. And as we were talking about too previously, there's still people that we know and other people out there that have been out for going on 5, 6 months now, if not more, and not trash quality people. And it's just a really, really odd and infuriating and or infuriating and just crap time right now. And yeah, it doesn't seem like anybody's been safe. This is something that with this industry that, I've been in it since 96. And, I've been an artist in it since 2008. And with the exception of 2008, 2009, whenever the housing market and the economy just tanked and there was a big dip in jobs and stuff then, and a re-evaluation and everything of companies that was going on. That was a drop in the bucket compared to what's been going on now. And I don't know. There's like I said, reasons that people have written endlessly about, and it being the economy, it being these corporate investor raider types that are, the whatchamacallit, what's the company that's been doing all of this, that's fell through on a $2 billion Saudi loan. Embracer Group that comes in and just devastates these companies, buys them out, and then almost like corporate raiding, what happened was going on in the 80s and 90s and stuff, where they would just come in, buy everything up, and then just lay waste to everything and make their profit, or try to make their profit. And then there's the making it look good to investors, the whole cycle anew again. And we got to rehire, then we got to fire, then we got to, and it's just this cycle. And, is it part of that? Is it the wars that are going on? Is it the global economy? Like it seems like all these things, that it's just a perfect storm of whatnot, of everything, kind of lumped in together, that unfortunately right now, everybody's suffering from. And even though I have a job currently, when I hear about my friends and other people in layoffs happening still, I get tremendous anxiety from that, because I'm just like, I know that in an instant it can happen to me, the company that I'm at, God forbid anything does happen, but there is, as we've seen, no rhyme or reason. And at any moment it could just happen. Sorry, for whatever reason, the studio's closing, or we're laying off half of you guys, or whatever it is. And I've been part of all different types of layoffs. And so I kind of, I know that it's not, always the best case scenario. And so I try to be as optimistic as I can about it all. But having been through a lot of the experiences that I have thus far, it's hard for me not to see that it's just, fine, because obviously we know it's not, but it's obviously, I try to keep that balance of like, okay, I am working and I'm fortunate right now. But I also know that at any moment, bam, it can just, and it's happened before. So
yeah, it's a horrific time, and on many fronts, it's like, it's so relatable what everyone's going through. It is kind of like this lingering, it feels like we're at the end of it, right? But with news where, like today, where Microsoft is kind of leading the charge on all these kind of layoffs lately, it feels like a reset again. And we're kind of hoping by the end of summer now that things will kind of, but who knows, maybe these companies have another plan. And there's only so much damage I think developers can take. Like you said, I think what doesn't get talked about enough is, even with people that have quote unquote stable jobs right now, there is like this element of anxiety, because it's not just so much that the person being directly affected, there's got to be some residual kind of trickle down effect to us somehow, right? I mean, we're seeing it pretty much everywhere. Like these projects drying up, investors are a little bit more hesitant to kind of go invest in the industry right now, right? They're kind of just waiting. It's like just shutting the books until 2025, and I know, and that there are games that people are trying to get off the ground that are promising, but essentially being told like we gotta wait. It's like not a lot of people can afford that, right? To wait and see for the remainder of the year. Like your story is super enlightening because I think the last time we talked shortly before the year, or actually it was after the year a bit, right? You were anticipating that, you were feeling this, and that's the thing that most people are kind of feeling right now. But it's kind of like almost unavoidable to an extent, because now the competitive level in the job market is unprecedented. I've never seen so much high level seniors and leads, directors even, that are just waiting. And I don't know how exactly that's going to work with, it still will take some time. Like even if the industry wakes up tomorrow and say, all right, we're ready to on board, it takes months from then to kind of even welcome the type of talent that's out there, to kind of balance again, as a whole, to be stable enough to kind of take in that many people at one time, right? Just the idea of managing and introducing people into the culture of a company, it takes a lot of onboarding and patience, and you can't do 10 at a time. And at this point, it feels like you get, to equalize the amount of damage that's been done, you gotta like onboard 30% a day even, right? To kind of make sense out of that. It's I don't know. Like I thought, like you said, March will be the beginning of the turn. Now it's almost June, right? I thought, all right, for sure by June, but it feels like Microsoft has, they just went through a recent acquisition. So in the past, acquisitions is not something to be, it's always something to be cautious of, right? Because there's always redundancies, right?
There's obviously fallout that happens from that, and it's usually more of a negative thing for the existing people. But it also does potentially open up for new people. But it's still, once again, the old people there, are definitely going to be in fear of what's going to happen, and who's to say, am I redundant or not, or am I no longer needed, or is this position, or where is it even going, And so it's one of these things where, and the other thing too that happened that is extremely frustrating was when Blizzard laid people off. And right before they laid those people off, they had a mandatory everybody in the office. So I had friends that worked with other people there that had to move from other places closer to the office, obviously, to be able to work. And then a month at time, maybe 2 months for some, they were given the shaft. And it's one of these things where a lot of these companies now are starting to switch their mindsets again of, no, we want everybody back in the office. We want the old way. And it seems like there's that whole going again, because during the pandemic for 3 or 4 years, it was an employees market. It was us being able to command higher salaries, being able to say, I want to work from home. I'm going to move to a cheaper location or somewhere else that I can enjoy that work-life balance.
Yeah.
And all the employers were like, okay, okay, okay. The majority of them at that time. And it was like, awesome. This is something new. This is how it should be. This is great. And we're proving that we can do all this from home. It wasn't oh my God, everything's on fire. This stuff is not going to work. It was, holy crap, this stuff works. This is awesome. Yeah. And now it's this weird mentality of, because it seems like real estate developers are pushing some of these CEOs and some of these other investors to push to get people back in their buildings, because if there's nobody in there to pay for them, then they're going to be losing money, and they don't want that. So it's the same thing that happens or seems to be happening with politicians type of thing too. Joe Biden's before of, we need people back in the office. And it just seems like it's this lobbyist mentality that was happening or is currently happening, where these real estate investors and moguls and everybody else that own these properties need them filled, because if they're not, they lose out on all this money. And if new buildings aren't being built, then there's no money for them, or as much money to be made for them. And so it seems like the employers or the corporate heads or whoever are pushing back to say, hey, you employees, you guys work for us, shut the F up, and you're going to do what we say. And look, there's not a whole lot of jobs out here right now. Yeah. And there's not a whole lot of stuff you can do about it. So take what we're going to give you, or be thankful again. And it's almost like the balance of that power has been smashed onto the employee again. That's just how it feels to me. So
No, I think you're completely correct. It's definitely an employer's market. It's very slim pickings because of the conditions and the headlines that we're faced every day. It's very hard to, like, there's really no room to negotiate. You can't really go in there with resume. Everyone has a resume. Like literally everyone is going for that job right now. And I've seen some ridiculous things too. Like I've seen like a few cases now that I'm pretty sure you saw. It kind of went maybe viral, definitely on Twitter. I don't know on LinkedIn, but it was just an animator getting a rejection letter saying that, hey, actually we got someone and they're working pro bono. Just for, like a modding, like a professional, but like for a modding community or type of thing. It's like, hey, we're just doing this for the love of it, right? Like it's making, I mean, if people are willing to like basically work for free just to have a title, right? We've gotten to that state. What chance do people have to really kind of apply? I don't think it's going to trend. I mean, obviously people are not going to starve just to work on your game. But it's kind of showcasing, at least, at the bottom, what people are willing to do now that, maybe a couple years ago seemed ridiculous. It still seems ridiculous, but, this kind of shows at least the overall perspective of what people are willing to do. I mean, I would love to kind of hear like just maybe general consensus of what you're seeing. Maybe certain people, you can leave them nameless, but like, what is it like right now for these probably mutual friends that are out there for like the last 6-8 months? I mean, what kind of things are they considering? Changing careers? What are you hearing out there?
That's what I'm wondering too. And I have more than a few friends that, the ideas that they share are different. Some are more senior, some are more newer into the industry that before they were laid off, that was maybe their first or second job. Some people that were laid off, like myself, par for the course. Here we go again. It just sucks because this type of market is something that we've never seen before. And so there is that fear and that, oh crap. But it's almost too like, where are we going to go? Are we going to look into film? Oh, that's just as volatile, if not more. Are we going to go look somewhere else in the tech industry and the tech sector? Oh, they're suffering just as much as the gaming industry, if not more. And so it's, I don't know, like that's what panics me, is to think, especially as I get older, am I going to get, aged out? Am I going to, what's going to happen whenever I get into my mid to late 50s, early 60s, and I'm not management by then, because I don't have a huge desire to be in management. Maybe one day that'll change. I don't know. But it seems that the people that I do know from before are currently living off of their severance. But not everybody gets that, depending on what company you were at. I know that my last company was Sony and Naughty Dog. That was the first time in my career that I had ever gotten a severance of any type, other than here's your last paycheck or here's your vacation hours paid out. It was a severance plus my vacation hours paid out. And it was something that I'd never seen. And so I was extremely grateful and fortunate for that. And so I know a lot of people are living on that, but it's 5-6 months deep now. And, depending on significant others, or how much did they even have saved even before that. And so it's something that is truly terrifying. Like I said, to me, I'm in a fortunate situation where I am working, but I'm thinking all the time. I'm trying to make sure that I save, and even whenever I'm trying to enjoy stuff when I can. But I'm also still thinking in the back of my head, this can just all of a sudden stop. And then I have to worry about I can't, I shouldn't go out to eat tonight. My kids and I shouldn't go and get fast food or get this or whatever it is. Because it's just always in the back of my head of this could be your reality. And so I'm trying to make sure that I'm not being ridiculous with certain things or most things. I do collect shoes, and so I spend money on that. But I try to stay in a lane, and I'm trying to keep my money and save it and this and that, because it's so volatile. Like I said, you just never know. And so some people that I talked to, obviously previously too, were talking about how they were able to save a little bit, because they, a lot of us that have been through this, you just don't know. But usually if something like this has happened, our company, usually it was when we shipped a project, it was like, oh crap, are we going to get another one? Do we have another one? Oh crap. And that's what you had to worry about. And now it's just and that was for even something that may not even have been there. Now it's like some of these companies have pretty quality projects on the books, and they're just getting cut, and they're just getting shut down. And it's just like, holy crap. Some games that have been in development for a year, 2 years, 3 years, whoever the investors are or the heads of these places are just going, nope, let's just get rid of those because they don't look like they're going to make us enough money. And it's like, once again, what is enough money? What is, if it comes to this mentality of how is it that these companies can lay off their employees and not take pay cuts? How is it that their first initial anything in the midst of any sort of trouble, a game isn't selling as well as they thought it should have, or somebody over projected, or they set their standards way too high where they needed to make 800 million and they only made 500 million, and that's a failure to them. And so where is this mentality coming from? And also too, what's happened with our development costs? Holy crap, I've worked on some titles where the leaked budgets were over $200 million. And it's just like, wow, and we're starting to see at least some rumblings and things of the AAA sector, not being what it needs to be or should be, and this and that. And these indies are going to start taking over. And I understand, that mentality, and that aspect is scary too. There's always going to be AAAs, but once again, it seems to be, at least from listening to, LinkedIn and all these other channels for our industry, is like, what's even going on, is, and then you just add on top of that, once again, the instability of the economy worldwide, of America's stuff that we have going on here, and two of the wars that are going on right now, and where we're funding this stuff too, and it's just like, what's going on with us? And so our industry is it caught up, and is it a part of all of that? Or all the economies? You'd like to believe, yes, of course, it makes sense, but there doesn't seem to be any definitive answers. It's just like I was stating before, it's a little bit of this, and it's a little bit of that, and it's this, and it's that. And then we bring up too, and I've always been a firm supporter of it, of we need some sort of union. Yeah. We need to get together. And you see Sega and the testers that got together, and they have a union, and the VFX groups they've had a union, so it's like, I think, and as you see everywhere, people writing about stuff, is this seems to be a wake-up call or a call to arms of, we need this. And I've had some friends who before have said, no, we don't need unions. It's a waste. It's this and it's that. And then, we've had discussions about it, and they've said, well, what's your opinion on it? And where do you stand? And I tell them, and I'm like, look, it's not a matter of like, good or bad. It's a matter of at least having a leg to stand on when both of our legs have been cut out from underneath us. Yeah. And I'm 100% willing to give more when I'm able to, when I'm working, if that means that other people who aren't can benefit from it. Because you know what? I've been a beneficiary of needing those benefits numerous times, whether that's federal unemployment, or whether that would be some sort of financial help from a union, or some other types of things that we as artists and game devs and stuff put our money into, that, you know what? It's like insurance. Yeah, you may not need it, but when you do, holy shit, it's going to make a tremendous difference. Yeah. And so the benefits to me far outweigh the negative. Are there going to be negative aspects of it and shameless and ruthless people behind certain things? Big time. It's human nature, unfortunately. You find it in all aspects. You find it in the church with God. You find it in big business and industry. You find it in government. You find it everywhere. And there are going to be shitheads that infiltrate, that want to benefit and try to manipulate and wring out whatever they can from other people, because they're just shitty in and of themselves. Yeah. But I like to believe that there's a lot more of us that are good-natured and that are positive, wanting these things to come forward in a good way to help and benefit the many. And so I feel like to be able to try to get at least that established is going to be something that benefits all of us. And, it's the same thing with like a universal type of healthcare in America, where it's been fought against for some of those that didn't want it, because I don't want to give my tax money to people that don't work and who are wasting their money, and they should be out there working. And it's like, you know what? And then I've heard those same people 2, 3, 4 years later, 10 years later, go, holy crap, I never thought it would happen to me. Yeah. And we're starting to see it way more often than not, as you were stating before, with our industry, with studio heads, with lead artists, with directors, people who before 10, 15, 20 years ago would have never been touched with layoffs or anything else. They were always the golden gooses and the last people standing. Now it's like, here's just a grenade, and wherever it lands, see you later. Mm-hmm. And so if that doesn't give cause for people to go, oh shit, nobody's safe, that now let us do everything we can to at least try to make an even playing field, and being able to negotiate certain things when needed, to be able to have a general idea of where everything stands instead of people getting fully taken advantage of. Trying to eliminate that as much as possible, to me, makes the most sense. And as I've said, I've been in this industry since 96 and an artist for the last 13 plus years. And I don't see it getting any better with the way things have been going. We start to make more money, and then all of a sudden inflation and everything else around us catches up and surpasses where we were. I remember whenever I was like, man, if I just make $80,000, $70,000 a year, I'm set. Then I started making that. Now it's like, oh my God, I'm still struggling here. Yeah. And then it was like, okay, when I make over 100 grand a year, I'm going to be set. Yeah. I make over 100 grand a year and holy crap, I feel like I'm making 60 grand a year. Like everything just keeps hopping past where things were at one point. And that's with inflation and everything else, obviously. But it seems like with the state of everything in general, how can it hurt us to try to come together and say, hey, you know what? I'm here to try to help all of these other people that need it when they need it. What's wrong with that? Then we work on the things that don't work. It's just like with democracy. It's a great idea. It can benefit and it can run really well. And obviously it seems to be one of the best things throughout human history that has actually worked. And are there downfalls of it? Are there negatives of it? Of course. Are there people that are saying, F this, burn it down? Yes. But in general, it seems to be the most economical type of situation that we have. And I feel that this industry can at least benefit however much, 1%, 5%, 100%, from having some sort of union. That's been my stance. I've heard other people's stances on it that were against it. And some, fortunately, after talking to them about it, changed their tune and said, sign me up. Because like I said, how can you be against something that is potentially so beneficial? Yeah. So you get a little bit more taken out. Yeah, you know what? It sucks to already have to pay taxes. That's a whole nother issue to get into that is just a what the F. But I'm totally willing to get 20, 30, 40 bucks less per paycheck to put into some sort of pot or whatever else for other people that when they need it. Some people might call me a bleeding heart for that, or whatever they want to say, blah, blah, blah. But what's the harm in that? You know what? When I'm doing good and I'm able to benefit, I want other people who are maybe struggling, who are out of work for 6 months, 8 months, a year, who are thinking about jumping ship to go have to do something else to support their family or themselves. What does it cost me in the end when I'm fortunate? Nothing. Yeah. But the benefits to somebody who tremendously needs it, it's a matter of night and day for them. And so, because I also know that I've been there, and we're all going to be there if we haven't already. And that's one of the things I tell my students too, is always be ready. I try to also ingrain in them, make sure you're saving, make sure you put stuff aside, your game fund, because you never know what's going to happen. When we first start out in this industry, we all think everything is going to be great. We're working for a gaming company, we're working for these corporations. Like, what's the worst that can happen? And then as people 2, 3, 4 years into this machine start to realize why the burnout is on average 3 to 5 years in this industry. And so I try to inform and give as many stories and situations and let them judge for themselves what they kind of need to expect before putting both of their feet into this realm of gaming. Because a lot of these schools, almost every school that I've taught at, aren't obviously fully preparing in that way, because it is a little bit of doom and gloom, and it's not all like you can do it, you can get a job, and things are going to be great. But right now, my last classes that I had, students were terrified too. Like they're going up against other people that have been doing it for a year, 2 or 3 years, or are they even going to want to hire a junior artist, type of thing? Or is this new mentality going to change back to let's just get the cheapest people, So I don't know.
Yeah, it's you hit a bunch of points that needs further discussion. Like this idea, like your last point, where like this mentor mentee mentality, like that infrastructure, like before all these layoffs were happening, even with remote, like it kind of like everything, like there's a con and benefit to everything. And remote, I saw there was definitely a de-emphasis on accompanying an experienced developer with a junior developer. Like it, during the COVID years, it just felt like we need to get things done. And we'll have meetings just to kind of discuss the essentials, and everyone go back to what they do in their own corner. And I'll see you when I see you. That doesn't work for someone that's new, right? I remember, and you probably remember, when our first year in the industry, it was basically shadowing, our seniors to kind of get the ropes, and there was like a dedicated couple of months of onboarding, just understanding like the things that they don't teach you in school, like per force and working with others, setting up meetings, what you do in the meetings, how do you kind of function in a team environment, that was definitely took a hit. And now it's been, I feel, even more deprioritized with all these Goliaths, these like high level competitive positions by people like you and I. Like what chance do students really have at this point to even have an opinion, to even have a say, to even have a time of day to kind of spend? So like even if the industry bounces back somehow tomorrow, right, or next quarter or end of summer or whatever, right, that group of that age, essentially the early 20s, they are at the back of that line, and there are going to be long-term ramification of essentially a generation of game developers that are forgotten, in my opinion, because when things do resume, we're going to immediately look at this kids coming out of Nomen right away, right? Well, there's like 4 or 5 years of students that will get lost in the shuffle that was on standby, but then now they're not as relevant, or they have to move on. They have to get other jobs in other industries. Like I'm sure students that we used to go to school with, after 6 months of not hitting, they have to switch.
I had a lot of those students that whenever I was teaching that unfortunately just weren't able to get jobs. And I look at their profiles on LinkedIn, and the majority of them aren't even working in the gaming industry. They're doing some other random jobs or industry, not using gaming at all. So
that's always going to be a persistent thing. Just students out of college. I think the statistics back then when we were going over 15, 18 years ago was just, you're talking about 10% of your class that actually will get something. It's just that competitive back then.
Yeah.
Way less now. I mean, it's always going to be that way, but now in this type of job market, it's like, dude, like even crazier. Your point on unionization. I mean, I think even on this podcast, the first time we were talking about unionization was years ago, and we had Emma Kanema on, and maybe I should have her back, to be honest. But like, it was a hot topic then, right? There was arguments on both sides, pretty strong, compelling arguments, but at the same time, there was like this fear, right? This underlying fear of job security, for both reasons. Like, well, is it going to jeopardize my current job to do it, to join a union, or is it going to enhance the possibility so that when I do lose my job, it's going to save. I love your idea. I like it. Totally makes sense. I think the biggest problem that's happened right now, and you probably heard this, right? The biggest thing that studios, companies are taking advantage of. I mean, there are obviously realities that companies can't sustain if there's no business or income. They just can't keep the doors open, and a lot of companies are trying their best to kind of hang on to that, to kind of wait this out. But there are a lot of other companies that are kind of using this as a way to clean the books, to reset, and
that's always been a trend. Anytime there's been mass layoffs happening, you start to see other companies that are restructuring. And they pile on so they don't get that bad PR, and they can easily just sweep everything under the rug and just be like, oops, and then they don't get the scrutiny of what the hell is going on over here. It's just they kind of become that sucker fish on the back of the sharks or the whales or whatever, and then they just kind of do what they need to do, and then they break away again, and business as usual after that. So
that's 100% what's happening right now. I mean, because a week later, I was talking this with Ray. They would announce they had record-breaking profits, right? And that's the most upsetting thing. Because our industry, yes, there's inflation, but our industry has been growing. There's more players than ever. There's like incredible games, right? And we just talked about this recently off with Arcane. Yes, Redfall didn't hit, right? But that's one game out of their whole portfolio. They have a lot of weight.
15 years plus of a history.
And they can't survive one game, right? And it's a corporation's responsibility to kind of be able to prepare for that, and be able to kind of alleviate a failure like that, and to close that down. And even the other studio that made Hi-Fi Rush, which is an amazing platformer game, it looks incredible, like top of the line stuff. Evil Within, as well, right? Like, these are mega hits, and it's disheartening because there is no defense line right now, right? These companies and corporations are doing this because they can, because there's no repercussion for laying off 1,000 people at once, right? And because of that, I think all we're kind of asking is, like, we need something to at least give hesitation, all right, to give at least a warning, to give at least an ability to fight back a bit, And right now, developers are definitely defenseless, have no ass armor, as as our teacher used to say. Shout out to Alan Emmerich. Yeah, but like right now, that's the problem, and I hope the tide is changing, but I still don't see that effect yet. There's thousands and thousands. There's thousands and thousands of people being laid off. I see more people posting about, hey, I'm on my last legs. I'm on my last month. I don't know what I'm going to do. Need help. Like, I wonder what would be the final push for us to finally stand together and do something, right? I guess we're all kind of waiting for that one person to stand up to kind of lead the charge.
But what is it? How is it?
We're so disorganized.
But if I knew, I would do what I could. I don't know what to do though.
Well, the crazy thing is the voice actors within a month of being offended, they were able. It was a huge news header, right? Remember that? And it was like maybe a couple years ago where it was even before AI, right? It was just like, hey, voice actor rights, this and that. And I remember game devs kind of piling on to that, like hating on them.
Because
like,
we
yeah,
it's been our struggle the whole time.
And then we basically see someone do it better than us. And instead of like learning from that, right?
We just go back to business as usual.
Exactly. And now we're in this situation and we still don't know what to do with it. And the Voice Actors Guild, said something that really caught my attention. And they basically said, hey, we're all for you guys doing this as well. We're not trying to like take yours or like, cut in line or anything. That's not our intention. It's just that we're trying to like get to this point that we have rights, as a worker in the game industry. And I was actually the first time I was really disappointed at the kind of response that these people were giving and just hating on basically these outsiders, quote unquote. We're not really, right, doing it better than we can ever do it, right? And now we're kind of sitting on LinkedIn refreshing, being jealous, and learn nothing from that. We're the opposite of the music industry when it comes to banding together and protecting ourselves. And I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. Like, if this doesn't do anything, and I feel like most people are kind of waiting, nothing will, and that will give more ammunition for the next time to be even crazier. Because what is stopping them? It's like, hey, remember that year and a half when we laid off basically 90% of people and nothing happened? How awesome is that? We made $300 million back. And what's sad is, this is the sad part, right? I'm hearing, like, I'm sure you hear this, and I'm not ashamed to say it. You have friends at Epic that went through this recent layoff, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm hearing them getting hired back at half their salary, and people have to accept it. And it's sad. It sucks, but they knew that would happen. Yeah.
But that's what it seems like. It's this, obviously it's not exactly like that, but it seems like it's like I was saying, the employer's going, hey, you guys are the workers here.
Yeah.
You need to shut the F up.
Yeah.
You guys need to know your place. And guess what? We're going to show you where that place is.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of what it feels like right now.
Yeah.
And it to some might say, no, it's because of all these other things. But it does still feel that there is that balance of shifting of power, where it was an employee's market for those 3 or so years where we were able to command and do what was just, at least for the most part, for almost the first time in history, it seemed, of our industry. And then it seemed like, oh, you guys are getting a little too big for your britches. Yeah. Let's make sure. And I know it obviously goes way beyond that, but it just seems like there's a little bit of that element where, once again, as employers jump on this bandwagon of layoffs, that it's just like, now we can really make the employees realize where they stand again, under our boot, listening to what we have to do and say at any given moment. And that's it. And we were fortunately able, it seems like anyway, a small victory so far in the past couple of companies that I've worked for, since it was an issue with the overtime stuff and that whole thing, is that it seems to be a lot of companies now, or at least recognizing, at least in my experience, some people could be at companies right now when they listen to this and go, what the fuck? My company's not doing that. They're doing the complete opposite, of making us do overtime and put in all these hours and all this other stuff. But I fortunately, in these past 4 or 5 years, have seen at least a shift in that mindset, where it's like, especially the company that I'm at now, Cold Iron, they're very much, our producer, very much, don't worry about this other stuff. If you've got to heal or rest or family priorities and stuff like that, it's like, that's the priority. And it's good to be a part of that and see that. Those are the good aspects of things. But with all this other stuff, it seems like a lot of the employers are like, no, you guys don't get to have a say in this. This is how it's going to be. And like you said, if they're going to, somebody's making $200,000 a year, they're looking for a job for 3, 4, 5, 6 months or more. Then that employer comes back around and says, oh, we need you again. We'll rehire you, but we'll do it at $110,000. Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And, some people will be like, F them, don't do it. But it's like, hey, I still have my bills and I still have my kids and other things that I've got to take care of. And
I got to wait this out at least. Yeah.
Yeah. And at least this amount of money that I'm being cut in half, at least it's better than no money.
Yeah. It's better than,
so.
Yeah, that's the reality. I mean, you're looking out there in the landscape. LinkedIn, I have to take a break sometimes because it's so sad.
It gets saddening. Yes.
Yeah, and there's just super slim picking, and it is a storm that we're going through, and everybody gets it, right? And I think it is a lot what you said. There's definitely seems to be like this statement being made by companies of like, here it is, I do feel during COVID, I was afraid, and I'm listeners can, it's recorded, right? I've had so many conversations with guests at that point. Like, I am scared of how heavily it's leaning with employees right now. Like, it's ridiculously too heavy-handed on that side, because the pendulum just swings just as hard the other way. And even saying that back then, I do feel right now is like super exaggerated. Right now, it's like, nah, man, this is too much. Record-breaking year. Like, how many times can Microsoft do this? I mean, this is their second or third time doing this to their companies, and that there are just things when you do this that you can't rehire people back. We're gonna lose a lot of people to other industries. We're going to either people retiring early, best case scenario, if they have that choice, or just altogether, never coming back. And the effects of the new generation of developers that's gone, man. We're talking about 3-4 years of new developers. Yeah. Gone from just like this last year and a half. So the potential of those kids will never be realized, and we'll never know. We'll never know how what great gains we missed out on just because of this temporary quarterly profit mentality. It sucks. Like, I think there's definitely whatever we can do. I think on my part, I'm definitely going to revisit this unionization, which felt like it was gaining traction a few years ago.
Seemed like it, yeah.
What happened? I don't know, man. It just fizzled out hard, I guess. COVID happened, I guess.
Yeah.
It was like shortly before COVID. Like, I remember GDC was like the most talked about thing for the first time ever in GDC history. I think there's a lot more empathy now than ever before, but not spoken about as much, especially now. Like, I look in LinkedIn, and I think that
I hear people bringing it up, though. This is the time.
People are bringing it up, but I think because the stranglehold of what the companies are doing right now is so fear-mongering, right? That people don't want to be so outspoken because you may come off as like, a troublemaker. Yeah. I'll just hire the next guy. It's such a shitty position to be put in right now. It's like, well, you're just telling me to be quiet and starve until you call me. It's like, what is going on?
Yeah. It doesn't work that way. It's a tough situation to be in. And like I said, it seems like it is one of those things, like you said, a stranglehold being put on things, because it's also the same thing about how a lot of times companies and stuff don't want their employees talking to each other about salaries. I've always been transparent with that. Because nobody can blame me. My coworkers, if they get pissed and jealous or they get upset,
Yeah.
That's not on me.
Yeah.
That's on whoever or whatever else. And I also, tell my students too that, there's negotiation, and never expect to make the as much money staying at one company for 5 or 10 years as opposed to going 2 or 3 companies in those 5 or 10 years, because that's not how our industry works. That's not how business works.
Yeah.
And so it just seems like it's this mindset of like, it's almost the same thing that happens on social media, where you get people that aren't true commenting and shit stirrers, and people that are paid to do these other things. And so to kind of keep the general consensus or the status quo happening, to where the fear mongering, like you were saying, happens, where as soon as, hey, unionization, all of a sudden these corporate heads release the hounds of whatever it is to start putting the fear of whatever into the employees that would potentially be doing this, to make it to where, oh yeah, well, yeah, I don't think it's such a good idea. And then it starts to get the word spreading of, yeah, it's not a good idea. Yeah, it's not a good idea. Then it becomes the norm in just people's heads, like we do. We're not reading the full stories, we're reading the headlines of things, the sensationalization of things. And so these things get spread out there of or how bad unions are or can be. And so the fear is like, oh crap, I don't want to be a part of that. And then it gets squashed. It's almost like this uprising is going to happen.
Yeah.
And then there's the inside moles that strike, that know where to hit, crush it. And so before it even begins, it's already destroyed from within.
Yeah.
And that's always a weird thing that seems to have been happening. And I don't know if that's conspiratory or whatever thinking, but it just has always felt like that. Like everybody, like I said, that I've talked to, the majority are for it. There's been a few here and there, as I stated, that I talked to, and they seem to have changed their tune after hearing the facts of like what it truly is to unionize.
Yeah.
Because they had these misconstrued facts or ideas about what unions were or are or could have been. And then when they hear these are the things that we should be fighting for, and just because they may not be initially working, it doesn't mean that we don't have elected officials or people in positions that can renegotiate things.
Yeah.
It's not like when you join a union, it's just like flat across the board. It's like, it's an ongoing process. And we're going to stumble out the blocks at first, but it's a matter of slow and steady and winning that race, or at least being ahead in that race, to where we don't have to panic and we're not tripping and falling and losing the race altogether. And so having the facts, having an idea and a plan, or plans and ideas, putting forth that momentum and those ideas out into the ether, so people can start seeing it in a better light of going, hey, here's the negatives and the positives. We're always going to have these negatives, but these positives far outweigh. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't know where it is to begin. I'm a part of me is just like, it's not a matter of saying, fuck you to the corporations and fuck you to the bosses. It's a matter of, hey, we've been screwed so hard throughout these decades of working in this industry, and we've seen it in other industries, that please, all we're asking for is a fair, level playing field.
Yeah.
We're not trying to get more out of it. We're not trying to bamboozle the system and give it the shaft. We're trying to say, hey, we've been in situations, in very desperate situations, where we've had family and loved ones and other things that needed taking care of. And some of us were living in cars. Some of us were jumping industries and having to get jobs that we didn't necessarily want to have to take, but we needed to. And our expertise lies in this industry. And what we want to see is common and beneficial things for all. And what those things are, we negotiate those things. We just like with any sort of other plan, this is what we're looking for. We shoot for the damn moon. And even if we kind of get halfway there, at least we're off of the earth. We're better than when we started that journey and that voyage. And so then we've got to keep building upon that and hopefully hit the moon and go beyond, because the more we're just doing what we're doing and spinning our wheels, we're never going to see this level playing field that I myself would like to see other people that I've seen struggle, and myself at times struggle in this industry, go through. Yeah. And so what that means in the future, I don't know. Like I said, if I had an idea, or if somebody came to me and said, hey, could you do this or do that? I would do everything that I could to try to make it happen. And if that means that some employers are no longer going to look at me in a positive light or whatever, I'm willing to take that, because the greater good and the benefit far outweighs me potentially struggling. It's going to suck, don't get me wrong, but I would like to believe that there are still some people that do know me that would be able to hire me, knowing that I'm not trying to be like burn it down and complete and total anarchy. I'm like, hey, when these situations come up, let's make sure that as a whole, not just you as this corporation, all corporations, just like all of us as taxpayers, we all hate paying our taxes. It's organized crime. It's robbery against us, but we still do it. And we can raise our fists. But what I think we need to be able to do is have all these corporations. It's not just, hey, we're going after you as unions, or we're going after you. It's like, you know what? If you guys are all good and cool and above ground with the way that you make these practices happen in your industry or in your businesses, you've got nothing to worry about. If you're setting out intentionally to try to screw over your employees, then yeah, burn in hell. No. But on average, I think most corporations or most companies, smaller mid companies, aren't out to do that. They want to make money, and they want to try to make sure that their employees are also taken care of. And so that's just kind of keeping everybody remembering, okay, cool. Yeah. If we do something like this, there's going to be ramifications. There's going to be repercussions. And so let's all make sure that we don't have to resort to that. That if you're not screwing me over, now I don't have to use the union lawyers or the union to be able to stand up and do these things. If you're putting in good practices, yeah, that doesn't mean it'll always happen, but know that when you start being and using unscrupulous practices here, we have at least a way to retaliate instead of just going, here, punch me right there. I'm just going to take it, So.
Yeah, I think the most compelling thing you kind of mentioned, which totally makes sense, is it's almost like an insurance membership thing. It's an opt-in, opt-out. It gives an opportunity for anyone that's interested and not interested to be a part of it. But it's literally just like us helping each other out, and in a way it's sustainable, right? Obviously, there might be some kind of beginning funding necessary to kind of have like a positive number to kind of take from, right? But the contributing factor of every person, every member that want to benefit from this, eventually it should sustain itself, as long as the limited membership doesn't outweigh the person that isn't contributing. You can't have, we can't save 10,000 people if it's only based on 2,000 members type of thing, right? Yeah. There's definitely an economy and a business model there that would make it work, that make people feel a little safer in your working industry. And I think it's something that, we're kind of meeting these corporations in the middle, because it's just like an opt-in solution, almost like a third party program that allows employees to kind of take a piece of their paycheck, instead of 401, on top of their 401k, hopefully, right? Yeah. They can still they can put it in this thing, but like that I think that is that's the problem with unionizations. Like, most people talk about it, I don't fully understand it, right? But like, no one really broke it down. It's like, all right, this is how it should work, right? And so explaining it in a way that everyone understand how it would work and what I get out of it, basically an insurance plan, but that isn't dumb, right?
Yeah.
Because insurance have its bad connotations to it. But no, it's I got to talk to some people, man, because I feel like there's got to be some conversations going on, man. I mean, we're all smart creatives. It has to be action, but I think a lot of people are so swamped with the chaos right now. And that's the sad thing, I think, in our industry. Like, we have like these major players that make it, and a lot of times they just get out. And a lot of times they tell people, like, don't invest in the game industry. It's chaotic. And it's sad because they are actually in prime positions to kind of make these changes necessary, because they're not going to be even if they're going to be demified or like outcasted. They already made their money, right? There's no really big effect. But that's, again, we're looking at like this X factor, and again, not taking responsibility of what we do. There does need to be combined with guys in the trenches, guys and gals in the trenches, to take action too. We can't just wait for the savior, like Gabe Newell, which and to kind of
Jimmy Hoffa.
to kind of do all this thing for us. So there needs to be a combination of, like, if we love this industry, you truly love it, and you want to keep it going on, and you want to keep the talent here. It's a no-brainer, because I feel like at this point I can confidently say everyone have experienced a layoff, right? I mean, maybe years ago,
in this day and age,
maybe there was a high percentage, but now it's definitely, everyone knows what this feels like. And there's unfortunately a lot of people that have experienced this many times as well, right? So this is a never-ending topic. You're giving me a lot of inspiration just from this talk to, like, all right, I need to talk to some people too, because that I think the lack of education around it just
is huge.
It's huge. Like, even like I've had probably 3 or 4 or 5, like maybe 5 episodes dedicated to unionization, to talking to people who's been behind the scenes. But I would,
and you're still not any more aware than
I'm still
those 5 episodes.
I'm probably more aware than the average game developer, but I like you said, it's an evolving thing. And I think the last time I brought someone on was before COVID, and COVID kind of took over all the conversation. And now it's AI. AI took over everything. And before that was the NFT. Like, there's always like this technological disruption, because we're the game industry, we deal with real time, that takes over the conversation. And unionization, unfortunately, the most important thing that we should be talking about is always at the bottom of the totem pole, deprioritize. Because it's difficult, I guess, the most difficult thing to talk about. I do want to say thank you for coming on for your 3rd time, right? Unofficially 2nd time before. I'm going to shut up. I'm actually going to hand the mic over to you if you want to give extra attention to anything that you want to talk about directly to the listeners and viewers out there.
Currently, nothing. I think we've discussed, one of the hottest issue that's been happening in our industry this past year and a half, where, like we were stating before, we thought it was going to get better by the first of the year, and it just, by the end of January, beginning of February, there was way more layoffs just in that 1 month than there was the entire year before.
Yes,
or close to it. So that was, and still is, and like I said, it's very disheartening. Whenever I heard about the stuff this morning, it was just like, oh, and you hear about all these other smaller studios and other places and other companies, 5% of its workforce or this amount, and I read other consumers' comments randomly on Facebook or on Instagram or other social media sites, where people who aren't in the industry are reading Kotaku's posts or other types of posts about the gaming industry, and hearing, some of the general consensus is, well, they were making games anyway. What'd they expect? Or they don't. It's like, we get this bad rap of, like, we shouldn't be making money anyway. We shouldn't be having the benefits of a true job because we chose to get in this industry in the first place, and we're only making games anyway. So we're not really working. And it's just crazy to hear, these mindsets of people who don't know any better. And it's also even more disheartening to hear when they speak about people that every person that gets laid off and that's been laid off has some sort of a family or themselves that need to be supported or things that need to be taken care of, including mental health. And lots of things go into this. And so even if one person's laid off, that doesn't affect the majority of people, and people continue to go on in life, but that's completely life altering, and that world gets turned upside down. Now you multiply that each time, and that is a giant problem that happens. And the fact that we, those of us that have been around, can, like, as I have, unfortunately, this morning, just kind of like, oh, here we go again, is just kind of, like I said, par for the course. It's just like, it's just part of what we do, and it sucks to have to think about that and have to be that way because, nothing in life is guaranteed. I understand that. But I just wish that our industry was a little bit more stable in being able to provide its workers with a little bit more of a foundational support when it comes to our futures. It could be easily stated, well, you know what, invest your money or don't spend your money on this and save it and work, find other things that you can do, find side hustles and do this and that. And it's just like, I get all of that.
Yeah.
But there is the reality that that's also not feasible for everybody.
Yep.
And that's the majority, that it's not feasible or it's not possible. So being able to help, to being able to take care of the rest of people in this industry, which is, I wish it could happen worldwide, but that's a whole nother issue of things. But at least within our industry, we experience it daily, the ins and outs of it, the ups and downs, because we've also, like you said, almost all of us at this point in this journey, if you've been in this industry for more than 3 or 4 years, chances are you've probably either been laid off or your company has gone under or some other unforeseen circumstance has happened to you. And so going back to, I remember the first time I ever had to go on unemployment back in 1996, I remember it was very taboo for me to say anything at that time. I was, 18, 19 years old, to say that I was even on unemployment because it felt dirty. Yeah. And so I think it's something that, when it comes to all of this stuff, that we just need to band together. We need to be able to help and support because, all of us, if not by now, will experience this. I remember, I never thought I'd have to be on unemployment. I also thought before that that was for people that didn't work or didn't want to work or and it had nothing to do with that. And now you see, how it's changed and how so many of us have been on unemployment and how many people can speak on, hey, do this. This is what I had to do, on unemployment, when you need questions answered and you got to call into that nightmare of a hotline to try to get, your cases worked out or whatever. Those are things that have just now become somewhat of the norm. And so I'm hoping one day that we look back at all of this in this industry and go, remember that time when all this chaos, for 30 plus years was happening, and now here we are where at least things are a little bit more sustainable, whether it's from a union or whether it's from some sort of program or just the realization of, in a positive thing of corporate people in general, just having a better mindset, not out to screw the world over or to try to fleece the gaming industry and make a quick buck and then get out with their little bits of profits or large profits that they've made. Hopefully one day that, we'll get these people that run these companies who truly do enjoy it and understand the ins and outs, as you were saying, and plan for knowing that, you know what, just because we made $100 million on this game doesn't mean that our next title will do that. So let's reinvest. Let's put it back into making sure that we don't ever have to worry about that, or at least eliminate as much as possible that mindset of when you have to let people go, of, you know what, we've reinvested. You guys are good for this amount of time. So let's just continue down this path and everybody feel good, and then we'll revisit later on if things don't change, and keeping everybody, being transparent with it, and so that's what I hope for in the future, whether that's with a unionization call or whatever it is. I don't know, but I hope, fingers crossed. I've been through enough. And so I would like some sort of, for people coming into it, to be able to see them be able to be proud and be happy, and being able to raise a family or provide for themselves or whoever else in this industry, and not have to look elsewhere into something that they didn't spend money on in schooling or other ways and things like that, to where they can continue doing what it is that they love, so.
Yeah. I second that. It's a great industry to be in. When
very much so.
Things are not this bad. Usually, when it comes to like working with your buddies and making great art and products for people to enjoy, that part is awesome. Will always be awesome. Will continue to be awesome. And with all these issues, still, it's incredible that we're.
Yeah, I still love it.
Yeah, we still love it, and it's the funny thing is, like, we constantly get burned by the business of it, but
the love-hate.
It's a love-hate thing. So, yeah, it was great talking to you, Damien. As always, we're probably gonna have to keep talking about this, unfortunately, once in a while. But hopefully, things are gonna get better. I do feel it. I feel the itch. I hope so. But other than that, see you guys all next week.